Right, so welcome everyone. Welcome to this series of the panels from the International Association of Blended Learning, an association that is dedicated to the blended learning, the practices, and the principles. You can get more information on our website and also become members. We will be having this series of panels. We started with South America. We're now moving to Africa. We're going to Europe, Middle East, and then Australia and New Zealand and Australasia in general. All right, so without further ado, it is my honor to be moderating this session today. Unfortunately, our colleague and board member, Ms. Shadia Mansour, was not able to come, so I will be filling in for her. My name is Georgios Korpas, and I'm currently the IABL president. Together with me today from the board of directors is also Apostolos, AK, his board member, and more board members will be joining us later on. Now, I would like to start by introducing our panelists for today. I'll start with Dr. Faiza Derbel, who holds a PhD from the University of London Institute of Education, now UCL Institute of Education. She's an associate professor of English and applied linguistics at the Faculty of Letters, Arts and Humanities in Manuba, in Tunisia. She teaches graduate courses and directs the research in applied linguistics on computer-assisted language learning and various facets of the didactics of English as a foreign language. She also serves as a member of the National Commission for Curriculum Development and Innovation, the National Hiring Committee for the position of Assistant Professor, and is a course leader and head of the Aggregation in English National Examination Commission. Her research interests include various aspects of instructed second language acquisition, teacher cognition, and digital pedagogy. She's a member of the Committee of the European E-Learning Conference and a reviewer for the European Journal of E-Learning. She's currently a board member of Tunisia TESOL, and she was a founding member and former president in 2015. Thank you for joining us today. We'll move on to Mr. Kamal Faiz, who's an experienced language coach and leadership development trainer. He's the founder and managing director of Lean English Solutions. Thanks to his educational studies in the US in the field of organizations and leadership, he has helped and worked with some of the world's leading organizations in Morocco to create and deliver English language courses, professional communication, skills programs, and assessment. The scalable training solutions are delivered face-to-face, online, or blended by qualified experts. Driven by the philosophy for total quality management, he takes pride in integrating both lean method and NLP techniques into language teaching and learning. At LES, he understands well firsthand the overwhelming frustration of learning English for the workplace. For the past decade, he has trained thousands of corporate clients on how to build a growth mindset so that they can succeed in achieving their goals. Welcome again. Dr. Marwa Sam holds a PhD in English from Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar in Senegal. He has extensive experience in the English language teaching field, where he has played various roles, such as a teacher trainer, an instructor, and a consultant in both K-12 and higher education. Dr. Sam has also held various leadership roles, such as chairing ATS, and currently he's a director of the board members of TESOL International Association. Last but not least, Dr. Rathabile Mawela has a PhD in education, English language teaching from Rhodes University. She's the Alan McIntosh Research Fellow in the Institute of the Study of the Englishes of Africa. Her passion is reading. As such, her research focuses on the teaching of reading. She teaches curriculum studies and the extensive reading research modules to bachelor education in service students. And she also teaches the reading to learn pedagogy to Bachelor of Education honors students in the education department. In addition, she supervises master's programs in the English language teaching candidates. A warm welcome to all our panelists, and thank you once more for accepting our invitation. All right, so we will start, we'll highlight the panelists, will all be on spotlighted. So just give us 1 second to spotlight everyone. There she is. Okay, so the scope of these panels is to see how the how blended learning was, how people coped with blended learning during the COVID times. So as I said, we have already started with South America, and we've had very, very interesting discussions from different countries, Central and South America. So now I think it's the turn of Africa. So I would like to start with the first question that I would like to ask with Dr. Mawa. And my question is, how did you or your institution access knowledge about blended learning? I mean, association, self-paced learning, courses, training at your institution or elsewhere? What were the practices and what did you do? If you can start with that.
Thank you so much, Georgios. And I'm really honored to be here today in this panel with great specialists. And I would like to tell you first that English is taught in Senegal as a foreign language. It's not a second or third language, because we already have our native languages and French, and English comes later on. So we are in a Francophone country. So when COVID-19 came, it compelled us all to rethink in-person learning, because what happened was that there was a lockdown, people couldn't go to school, and most private institutions and public ones had to rethink and say, what should be done? And it became obvious that schools couldn't be kept shut while parents are paying tuition fees, mostly for private school. So people resorted to online learning. And the fact is that most of the government authorities tried to, because in Senegal, it's a very poor country. People cannot have access to the internet in most schools. And students also cannot have the devices which allow them to get to the internet. So what they did, it was to try and organize television classes on the national television, so that, students from their home could follow the lessons and they could be asked questions via WhatsApp, the WhatsApp application. So in most private schools and institutions, what happened was that with the pandemic, what they did, it was to start teaching classes online first. But when the pandemic started going down, we started the blended learning. So, and I saw it as an advantage because the class size is extremely big in Senegal. It can go from 50 to 100 students per class. So you see, it's a very big class size. So what they did, it was to try and divide the classes. So 1 week, one part could come in person, and the other week, and while the one part of the students were in class, the other students could follow from home. And so, and the difficulty was that the teachers were it was difficult for teachers to cope with that situation because they never experienced it. And the other thing is that in the private university where I deliver classes, what we were doing was we have 1 week with the whole class, and the following week, the students could follow from home. And I must confess that at first it was really difficult for teachers to deal with that because it was extremely new. And in my own case, when I used to go to TESOL or IABL, people were talking about the 21st century skills. I said, oh, what are they talking about? We are not implementing digital learning. We don't need it. And then when the COVID hit, I say, oh my goodness, these people, at least they had foresight. So it was difficult, but now more and more people are trying to cope with that situation and face it in a very positive way. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Very interesting insights. Dr. Faiza, would you like to give us your opinion?
Surely. The connection with technology in Tunisia really dates back to the 90s, I think, when Tunisia started to introduce a number of courses at university level. This is when we started to have informatics, or what we call computer science, as an obligatory subject in secondary schools. Also, there was a virtual university, the creation of the Virtual University of Tunis in 1998. Then in the run-up to what was then the Information Summit, which took place in Tunisia in 2002. From that time on, technology was really on the agenda. However, I think it wasn't generalized so much, sometimes due to the need for resources, infrastructure. But I can mention that there were two serious attempts to train teachers through collaboration with the university in the United States and Georgia. And I think, and there was also a number of collaboration, international cooperation programs with the European Union, I think with Canada as well. So Tunisia has been really building a little bit by bit, this educational technology tradition. When COVID arrived already, we have the virtual university in place, and we have a Center for Technology, National Center of Technology, also in place. So I think whatever were the decisions, the political decisions at that time, it was hard for teachers to switch overnight to online education. Of course, there were some enthusiasts here and there. There were serious institutions who were very serious about introducing an online course for their, for example, we have the School of Engineering in Tunis, the ENIT, which is pioneer in this area. And I know that they have already had, they used a software called DINED, that they made obligatory for all their graduates in order to improve their skills for English before they can go on to engineering schools in Europe or to do internships. They introduced certification, the TOEIC, and they also run many programs. I personally found two MA theses focusing on this little experience of blended learning, and those were in two different institutions in the sciences. So ENIT is one of them, and we have SUPCOM, which is a communication school, that means the digitalization school, also now playing a big role in the digitization efforts and e-government and so on. So, however, nonetheless, to go overnight and ask teachers tomorrow or next week, because the COVID situation was getting more and more serious, and people were saying, are we going to keep on teaching? Are we going to stop teaching? And then all of a sudden now it's the lockdown, and the decision was that we do distance education, remote teaching, I think, because again, two different things. But anyway, many teachers were really taken by surprise. Some institutions, as I said, if it is ENIT, where it had something in place already, they activated their teams. UVT, the Virtual University of Tunis, activated also their technologies. And there were very quickly many groups on Facebook, many tutorials. My own university, for instance, they created the special space for teachers, and we found tutorials on how to start Google Classroom, how to start Google Meet, and then again, we discovered Zoom, we discovered in a very short time.
It was more exploratory,
now, of course,
right?
there was a little resistance sometimes, you know, because some schools were really unprepared. The teachers totally unprepared. The students also didn't experience any technology teaching. So it was a very, let's say, in some way very active in some places, but also in some others, slow pace of accepting and going on and getting on with the teaching online.
Great. Thank you so much. Very, very insightful, I think. Mr. Kamal, would you like to give us your insights?
Sure thing. Good afternoon from Casablanca, Morocco. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel. I would like also to thank the board of the International Association of Learning. So to answer this question about when it was first introduced to blended learning, before my institution, I'm going to talk about myself as a personal experience. So back in 2006, some noise. Back in 2006, I was granted the Fulbright scholarship to the US to study there and to teach there at the same time. So it was part of the program. We had 2 mandatory classes that we have to take. One of them, it was fine, since there was someone to drive me from the campus where I used to live to the grad school. The second one, I had no American driver license, so I had to stay home, but I had to go through that class. So the only option I had was to go through the blackboard of the university. In Africa, in Morocco, blackboard is blackboard. You go, you have a chalk, it's a blackboard. So he told me, you know what, you're gonna put you on the blackboard. And nobody explained to me back then the jargon of what is a blackboard. So I'm gonna do it. What is a blackboard? How am I gonna join this class? This told me it's online. He said, yeah, you told me online, but you said also blackboard. So I still laugh at myself when thinking about that incident back then. So it was frustrating for 2 things. Because the face-to-face class, I used to have the Dean of the Humanities drive me to the grad school because he had a lecture there at that time. So it was for me fun to get out of the campus, to see America firsthand. It's a long hour. It's like an hour and a half drive from the campus. It was dinner out. It was like a fun day for me. It's like a kid who was waiting for that day to get out of the campus. The second class was more of connected to pain, was online. I had to stay, a lot of homeworks, projects. I was not used to that kind of formal directory reading or self-paced aspect or approach. So we were always dependent on someone to see the sage on the stage, someone to lead the class, someone to give you assignments and all that stuff. So the notion of empowerment through online training to me was completely different, was completely kind of a painful memory. So as Dr. Faiza mentioned earlier, it was a kind of resistance at the beginning. This class, in my mind, it kept me on campus. The other class, it was a chance for me to vent out and to see the world there. So that's why I got a B in that class and I got an A in that one face-to-face. Still remember that. Anyway, back from 2006, moving forward to 2013, in Morocco, I was introduced to a company that they provide corporate training to companies, and they have an already LMS system in place via Pearson, and everything is there. All you have to do, some kind of training, get used how to run the technology, and you lead the session. So it has its own tracking system. It has their lesson plans, complementary classes, book club, social club activities, and it was more towards corporate training. So that time we used to do face-to-face training once a month or once in 2 weeks or intensively every week with one client or company, and then have the whole concept of anywhere, anytime. They can finish their own modules, and then when you do that, we can see that monitoring, and we can call them for like what we called it back then an encounter, when we can evaluate, assess their levels. All right. 3 years later, I started my own company that I now provide soft skills and language coaching to corporate level. I kind of make it more simple, because back then in the previous with the Pearson project, we had a lot of clients, they said no to the blended learning. They said something, I'm 60 years old some, I'm 50 some, so I have to see someone. I'm more of kinesthetic person. I need to touch, I need to feel that there's a person, not a machine. I don't have to pay all this money to face a computer. So I had to blend myself into giving them some bit of face-to-face, online, and also documents or digitalized documents online to cope up with the whole blended system. So first, as an experience, I was blended into system, and then we blended learning system to give solutions to the people who resist the complete online courses.
Well, that sounds very interesting. I think you had first-hand experience that you then asked others to be part of it. Great, thank you so much for your input. Dr. Athabida, would you like to tell us your perspective?
In my context, Chair, may I start off by also thanking you for inviting me to be part of this. And I feel honored to be with important people when I'm just an ordinary person. In my context, the very concept of blended learning only came about, or we only discovered it in 2020 when the lockdown came in. The people who are in IT, information technology in the country, I'm sure they knew the term. And there were people who were driving the agenda of the fourth industrial revolution. There were quite a dedicated group trying to say we need to shift and so on and so forth. But the majority of us really couldn't be bothered. And even when they were trying to talk to us about it, would be polite and say, sounds nice, but talk to those who are distant learning. We don't deal with such things. And so the very concept was new. When the lockdown landed, we froze. The whole country froze. We were not sure what to do for some weeks. And eventually, but those who started moving faster were institutions of higher learning. The universities, within 3 or 4 weeks, they started saying, let's go online, let's do this. Basic education, we had serious problems there. And so one of the things that were done was we introduced the idea of television lessons or radio lessons for the children, but they were not synchronized. There was no follow-up. So yeah, the first few months were difficult. But with time, we started getting onto, started learning how to use Zoom. I only started using Zoom in 2020. So,
I think like most of us, I guess, that was the big year when Zoom kind of exploded everywhere around the world.
True,
great.
True.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to move on to the second question, and I'm just going to ask you, just try to have your answers in between 2 to 3 minutes so everybody has a chance to respond. So question number 2 reads, blended learning has gained more adepts due to its cost effectiveness, flexibility, diversification, and access in many parts of the world. Is this the case in your context? And I would like to start this time with Dr. Faiza in Tunisia. You're muted. Let me unmute you. That's the most common word I think we say.
Yes.
Yes.
I tried to save on the connection, as you know. Yes, in Tunisia, as I said, we already had some background in distance education. So, for example, when I mentioned the virtual University of Tunis, I know that a group of teachers and myself worked on a whole series of courses for ESP teachers. And we had firsthand experience with designing materials for the course and going to the virtual university to get it synchronized and to get it digitized and all this. But still, when it was the COVID, we needed all these people who had technological skills. And of course, Tunisia did not have again, a mass of these people to go everywhere in the schools. Therefore, there was really also the issue of access. There was the issue of, yes, but what can we do? There wasn't, for instance, enough mentoring or coaching to go around. So it was in the end like a managerial situation. So it was top down by necessity because it was top down procedure. So like in every institution, you had the head of the course, you had the coordinator who was trying to convince the other teachers, bring them together, give them some demos if possible, or send them links. Also, there was, again, the hard decision to make it work. There was the need to make it work because it was the school year. We had to finish the school year. There were exams going to be at stake. And there was this push towards, again, making it work. And sometimes I felt in this situation, we were not really prepared because there were no clear regulations for how to run blended learning or distance learning. How do we count the hours? How do we redo the timetables? How do we distribute the classes?
Right. But overall, I just wanted to tell you, like, overall, with one sentence, would you say that did you gain knowledge and did you expand your knowledge, or is it something beneficial, or do you think not really?
Yes, I want to think that it was really good experience for the teachers who, even though it was hard, it was a lot of work, but they discovered that there is technology out there, and that if we make efforts to acquire it, then we can do things differently. Probably not successful.
We ask our students to explore, and we do exploratory research, and so I guess we should do it too.
So many teachers never touched technology before, never used it before, and like two months later, we had another training at the university. Great. And those people said, well, now that we jumped in, let's move on and do more training.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Faiza. Let's move on to Dr. Mawa. Tell us your insights. Was it a beneficial, or what did you think about it?
Thank you, Georgios. I think it was a great benefit for one main reason, because most of our classes, as I told you, are overcrowded. And when blended learning came, it was an opportunity to deal with large classes. And the second thing is that with blended learning, it really helped solve the problem of textbooks we had, because many students didn't have access to textbooks. So when a teacher comes and take the textbook, scans the one parts, puts them on his screen and shares with the student, it's a great benefit, of course, for both the teacher and the students. So nobody can say, I cannot have access to the textbook, right? But at the same time, you know, the great difficulty is the access to the internet. Internet and electricity, because there are a lot of power outages. And when you are online, some students can tell you, sir, we don't have electricity. So how can you check? So this is the main difficulty. But the other thing is that this thing created really what I call a digital divide. Why a digital divide? Because the well-off neighborhoods could learn, or well-off schools and institutions, higher school institution could learn and have access to knowledge. But at the same time, in the public schools in general, people could not. And for something like 4 to 5 months, most of the schools were closed and no classes was provided. So that's why I say it was both a privilege for, you know, some schools and institutions to have some online classes, but at the same time, as the schools, they were left out and didn't have any access to blended learning. And the other difficulty was that also the access to the tablets, to laptops, and because in most schools, students cannot have access to these tools. And we were obliged to put to contribution the parents so that they could lend their devices to their children. So I think globally, but it was really positive because teachers changed their ways of doing, and it really helped impact positively the teaching and learning process. And we put it, and it was more student-centered, and we gained a lot by learning. And it was a great asset for teachers who had to learn new things. And this was, for me, a remarkable revolution in our environment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now let's hear from Dr. Athabile. What is your viewpoint?
Yes, we benefited a lot from the blended learning thing. I teach at the university, and our students and staff are scattered all over the country and beyond South Africa. And so it was a blessing to get to teach, and you know they can all learn. Even now we are now on face-to-face, but we have meetings, and sometimes some people cannot be there. We use this platform, so we now are able to, you know, the agenda, the academic agenda has not been compromised because of blended learning. So it's positive.
Great, thank you. And Kamal? You are muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my approach is a bit different. My situation is a bit different from here because I run a company and we deal with companies. So this is corporate training. So we don't have this kind of issues of electricity or internet, not with companies, but I'm sure in Morocco there are some parts where they still have problems of internet and electricity. I've heard some stories from some close friends during COVID times. They were just couching, so they were just laying down. Say, why you're not working? It's like, who am I gonna work with? The classroom that I'm supposed to be working with, nobody has got a regular cell phone, not even a smartphone. So yes, this is from the perspective of traditional teaching and learning. Yes, I believe there were some challenges. However, from my standpoint, from my point of view, a lot of companies have benefited from blended learning. So, and for me personally, we used to train, for instance, small groups of 4 or 5 face-to-face. Now the director of the company say, you know what, we can edit the clause of the contract. We switch to online. Can we add 5, 6? It's okay, because that time there were what we call the cabin fever. People locked down at home, feeling distressed. So we used to run team buildings online, and the majority of employees and subordinates benefited from these trainings. In the past, they used to cost an arm and a leg. Now they were accessible for most corporations. Number 2, it's time efficiency. So 2 hours workshop is 2 hours workshop. We start at 2, we finish at 4. So no driving, switching trains, blah, blah, blah. 3, I have many stories because I work a lot with some areas in logistics and transport, sometimes industry of pharmaceutical industry. And now we have clients in Casablanca, then different clients from Marrakesh, Laayoune, Dakhla, Tangier. And it happened to me twice or three times that one person from the same group, when we do group work, they get connected and they develop beautiful relationships from these trainings. And sometimes you found out that somebody just found out about his cousin is having the same training, even know that he was his cousin or her cousin. So thanks to blended learning, we're connecting people. We're just benchmarking this from Nokia for a second. We're connecting people. So blended learning has helped a lot connecting people. When we say connecting, it's social interactions, it's experiential learning, plus the formal learning. So 45, 25, and 10 minutes. So the 45 is about experimental learning. Is about the social, and the whatever left is for formal learning. So yes, we have benefited a lot from the blend.
So thank you, Kamal. So I think in general, I hear that there were a lot of benefits, and more diversity, more voices. I mean, it wasn't a smooth kind of operation, but in the end, now we can have more opportunities for people that maybe in the past they wouldn't have the opportunity to be with us, or we wouldn't be able to connect to them, right? So despite the problems, I think this was very, very important, I think in Africa, but as well as in other parts of the world. Now, talking about benefits, I will ask you, I know the question read about challenges, but I want you to tell me what was the most conflicting challenge, something that was really, really difficult to cope with, either your colleagues or your employees or whatever you had. So let's take about one minute each and just tell me what was the challenge that you thought was the most challenging challenge. Let's say it like that. Let's start with Dr. Mawa.
Okay, thank you, Georgios. I think the most challenging challenge, as you put it, was access to technology and the training of teachers. Most teachers were unprepared for that. And it was really hard. And hopefully what we did, it was to try in a very short time and train most teachers in Zoom, Google Classroom, even if we faced a lot of resistance, because teachers, whatever is new, they think that it can upset their whole way of teaching. But I think that was really from teachers themselves. The biggest challenge was teachers, and also change the school administrations to change the laws to allow students to have access to smartphones in class or at home. And I think that parents also, we had to persuade parents that, hey, we need you to give your smartphone or device to your children. I think these were really the biggest challenges. Thank you.
I think you talk about a very important thing, Mawa, here, that change of policy. A lot of educational policies in many countries, they have been stagnant or the same for, if not decades, for maybe a century. We all go by educational policies that are archaic, and they have never been revised because there was no need, right? There was no need for electronic devices, or there was no need for blended learning, online learning, or students studying from home, because in some countries this is not allowed, right? So
Definitely.
very, very important. Policy and procedure have changed a lot. Yeah. Great, thank you so much. Very good insights. Dr. Faiza, would you like to give us your challenge?
Yes, the most difficult feeling I had when I was like everybody else trying to provide my courses online or face-to-face or a mixture, to know that in my classroom there will be someone who is unable to buy a device or unable to go home, even in Tunis, the capital, to go home and not have access to the internet, or not have any study space, quiet study space. That's one. Second, it was hard for me to see that there was no mobilization from companies, banks, to assist the public universities with I know that there were the service providers, the telecommunication service providers, they gave free access and some tablets as well, but that isn't enough. There should be really social responsibility towards this area of the development of education in Tunisia, that they support technology, the incorporation of technology, the introduction of technology. And the third thing is, I think, the issue of teacher training and education. Because if you keep the teachers informed, knowledge about, and also the skills, because it is not enough to say, this is a demo, put this together with your old lesson plan. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I think it was from what you're saying, and what I hear is that teachers implemented technology because they were forced to implement technology. If they weren't forced, most likely they would choose not to. Because also, you know, as educational policies were shocked, I think teaching paradigms, teaching changed totally. And, you know, we lost control. When you're saying that you don't know if a student has a device, you don't know if a student has access, right? We are used to being in the class, we provide the material, and we have expectations from the students. Yes. Then there was a misbalance between that. You see what I mean? Like, we didn't know, or we don't know what was happening at home, or if there were enough devices. There are families with more than one child, right? Or people were working from home as well. So the parents needed a device, children needed a device, they were sharing, and so on and so forth. So totally, I think a total change of the mentality of teaching. Thank you so much, Faisa. Kamal, tell us a challenge from your perspective.
Oh, there are plenty of them, mainly the human capital. So we had some emerging vacancies in training companies. So we needed people to go out and train, you know, small groups, ESP, industrial, lean manufacturing. So it was really hard for us to train them. It took us, you know, it was an uphill battle. Still, to how to use lean method, NLP techniques, soft skills into transferring your know-how, because language now has shifted completely into a complete input-based, not an output-based. How can, it was difficult for a traditional teacher to come and work or change his hat to be a corporate trainer. So you have to introduce flipped classroom model, interactive communication model. Assessment is not longer the same. The high thinking order versus the lower thinking order. What you should be doing at home should not be done live in classes. So yes, it was more of trainers to be really equipped to lead ESPs and corporate things.
Great. Yeah, I agree. I think there weren't enough. Yeah, there weren't enough people. There weren't enough trained professionals to help and support the rest of us. Yeah, and I think in all fields, from K through 12 to university to corporate training to you name it, I think there weren't enough. And they were like very hard to find. They were extinct. You know,
now
they were.
You receive resumes, you say I'm ready, and then you go for a simulation of 15 minutes, and then the famous classical thing. Today we are going to talk about. I say, stop! You can't do that in flipped classroom thing. So it was
perfect. Great. And flipped classroom is something we can, of course, explore, and more is more. Students are. It's easier for them, I think, with the more asynchronous learning than in the past.
Exactly.
Dr. Zabila, would you like to wrap up this question?
Yes, yes, access. And I would like to say there's an A and a B to the access in my context. The A of it is there was an issue of access when it came to those who came from low-income backgrounds did not have the gadgets, did not have the laptops, did not have the data, and so on. And so the universities tried to provide. We purchased laptops for the students, and we provided data for the students in order for them to get tuition from wherever they were. However, the B, which is another issue of access, is for those who are in remote parts of the country, they could not access internet connection. The laptop would be there, the data would be there, but the student would not be able to access connection. So those were the two major issues. And when you talk about basic education, we still had issues of access. And to be honest, for basic education, even as I speak right now, blended learning is not yet a reality for those schools that are from disadvantaged communities.
Yeah, thank you. I think a term we did not refer to, and maybe this is something that you have come up with, is emergency remote teaching or emergency remote instruction, right? So when we all, including myself, when we started teaching online, I don't think it was online learning. I don't think it was distance learning. I don't think it was a hybrid or blended. It was a mixture of all. It was, and I think rightly so. And I really like the frameworks that were developed that talked about emergency remote instruction. And in some parts of the world, they still keep being in a more emergency remote teaching because they may not have the means, they may not have the pedagogy, because we need to make certain we discriminate between the online pedagogy and the tools. People think that teaching online, if you put 10 tools in your teaching, then you're teaching online. That's not it. The pedagogy is different. The timings are different. The way that you teach are different, right? Everything pretty much is different. And if you're educated about it, if you attend sessions, I had to attend sessions through my university in order to be able to educate others, right? So it does take time and it does take effort to teach online. And it's not easy. People say, well, you sit on your couch and, you're in your kitchen and you just, no, it's more difficult. You have to be more creative. We are talking about students that their attention span is like this. In class, they're there. They may not be paying attention, but you can bring them back. What about when they turn off their cameras? What about when they say, I don't have any bandwidth? There's no bandwidth for me to turn on my camera, so I cannot see you. I cannot hear you. They keep breaking. All of these problems that you had, you discussed, and so many others, I think made the life of emergency remote instruction more difficult than it could ever be. Right? So that brings me, to when we have problems, what do teachers do? We do research, right? So this is what we do. This is what brings us, help, because we see the same commonalities in different parts. So again, I would like to ask you, what do you think is an important aspect of all this period that needs to be researched on? Because we have seen different, examples of research about, what tools were used, which platforms were used. But for you, in your context, what do you think needs to be researched and showcased around the world for you? Let's start with Dr. Faiza. And you're muted.
I've been thinking a lot about this because I myself supervise students when they are doing their MAs. They say, oh, I want to work on technology. I want to work on teachers' use of technology. And then they give you this very vague topic about technology in Tunisia, for example. So myself, I have been in my own work with students. I try to work with students who will go and see how the technology is implemented. So I like to see classroom data. I want to also see I myself worked with the teachers on cognition, teacher cognition, how teachers develop concepts for themselves, how they figure out that they need to redesign their own instruction, how they tackle problems, what strategies do they use, and what fires them. Because I worked with one published study. I worked with 5 teachers who are technology, I call them technology capable teachers. So they've had a chance to have technology training. And I interviewed the 5 of them, and each one of them was working in a school like any other school, which had poor infrastructure, which had no support sometimes from the director of the school, and where there were labs, but the labs are used for computer science and not for teaching. All kinds of hurdles and challenges. But They were enthusiastic, and they, after all, taught with technology. Now, one of them was very impressive because she would go to the school with a backpack, and maybe she's probably here on the following us today. She would go with her laptop, her loudspeakers, camera, digital camera, and a microphone. And she would teach, she did at the time, without knowing, she did what we call rotation teaching. So she had students working with the microphone, the others with the one computer, the others taking the pictures, and then that's one of the ideas. So I'm currently also working on another project for myself with teachers who went through the COVID. Mm-hmm. And it's a retrospective interviews with some, of course, artifacts and realia that they provide me with. Okay, perfect. This type, but also there is more macro level research. Mm-hmm. Maybe I would say we need to explore the level of acceptance of technology in my country, I think. Right. Because we say they are resistant, they are not happy, they do not like it, they like it, the students love it. So let's do some scientific study.
Great, thank you so much.
The level of acceptance and adoption.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Dr. Thabile, what do you think? What should be researched?
Two things. First, teachers must be equipped to use, in my context, to use WhatsApp as their way of teaching, because that seems to be a little easier economically in my context than the other platforms. Mm-hmm. The second thing that I feel researchers need to work on is to find ways of equipping the community, the caregivers, with information so that they are able to take care should we find ourselves in remote areas one more time. Traditionally, before Western education came, there was education in the African context. It was not a responsibility of a chosen few. It was a responsibility of more people. And I think if knowledge dissemination is spread around, then we may have a few more things. So researchers need to find ways of make, and that can be one of the things that can be done is by us decentralizing English, so that these things are not only done in English. Unfortunately, for now, you need to know English for you to survive, you know.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. These are great ideas. Dr. Mawa?
Okay, thank you. So for me, blended learning can be an efficient way to help students learn better and faster. But you need to put research on one particular thing, because to me, pedagogy should go and meet technology, but not the contrary. Because now we need to adapt, we professionals, to the technology and find ways and means so that the students can find our teaching more digest. And to do so, we need really to see what the students really need and what they do. Because what we all know is that even in underprivileged areas, most students have access to cell phones, smartphones. So why not try and tap into this so that we can adapt our teaching to what the students are doing? Because we know they play with some of the tablets, smartphone. And now how can they now take our teaching with their tablets and their smartphones and turn it into something useful? And my takeaway is that now we have no excuse to say, well, we have COVID-19, COVID-20 or COVID-23. Now it is the time for all teachers and professors to be well equipped, to be ready, because failing to plan is planning to fail, and we need to be ready. And research should go directly into adapting our teaching to this new context. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think education was reconceptualized, so it's a whole change. And I was just talking about that in my class yesterday, and I think a couple of my students are here in their MA in TESOL, that context is very important. So when we do the research, context is very important, because something that might work in a remote area in Senegal might also work in a remote area in Greece or in a remote area in Saudi Arabia. So we need that research. We need those. But again, I think our, teachers, classroom teachers, they're scared of research, or they think that research is something, like for academics. But I think we do need, to get this firsthand experience, because this is going to help us. And I think it's going to help us for education in the future, because we really don't ask students what do they want to learn. We tell them what they need to learn, and we never hear back from them, in majority of cases, of course, right? Not everywhere. All right, Kamal, please give us your research from your perspective.
I like the saying, don't start your day until you have it finished. So we should begin with the end in mind. So the research, where we want to go first. So if we are able to answer this question, where we want to go, who we want to become, what kind of capital, human resources we wanted to develop in the future, I think this is a good start. So we should listen. In our case, I do two things in our company. First 2 weeks of training, we do primary data collection. So in the primary data collection, we are actively listening, because we believe that you seek to understand before, to understand first before, then to be understood. So we go over the lean manufacturing system or production line or whatever that, and we listen carefully and attentively to people's needs, so we can design carefully the learning objectives. And the second phase of it, it's more of neuroscience coaching. It's more understanding the profile of the learners.
Right.
Are they more of a resistant? Are they more of one with the flow? Are they more soft, passive, or receptive? So you should understand their profile workstation, so you can design a well-rounded curriculum that fits into the research. Should be, so to do so, we should have, go back to my previous point, we should have qualified human capital that can do it. We go back to the same thing of the quality of trainers and the quality of the human capital.
Thank you.
Can qualified researchers.
Thank you, Kamal. I think that's actually a very good starting point for us, because I know we ask our students, but I think more implementation needs to happen. So we might need to steal some ideas of your trainings into the research. Now, I don't think there are any questions. AK, are there any questions from the audience?
There is a question from the audience, and the question
great.
is, what are the recommendations you can suggest to better implement blended learning?
Great, so you all have 1 minute to respond. Let's go. Dr. Faisa, tell us.
Okay, I think together, before you implement a blended learning project, you have to design it first. And I think the design has to be context specific, as you said, with the participation of a team, and best if you can create some kind of a shared vision first.
Great.
And then go to the design of the material and so on. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
That's what I think is the best.
Thank you so much. Dr. Thabile, would you like to give us one sentence?
I agree with Dr. Faisa. It needs to be context specific. In a situation where WhatsApp works best, let's go that way.
Perfect. Dr. Mawa?
Yeah, just to go in line with all that, we need really to work collaboratively and invite all stakeholders so that we can speak with one single voice.
Perfect. Thank you so much. One sentence, Kamal?
In my context, HR trainings should be in sync with the vision and the mission statements of companies, and show employees and subordinates and all the workforce new opportunities, career opportunities when they implement blended learning in different styles of training, not only language, but sales, marketing, and all those sectors.
Great. Well, I think it has been a very, very interesting discussion, and time flew. It's already 1 minute past the hour. I would like to personally thank all of you for coming here today. I think we gave a lot of ideas, lots of insight. I have personally learned a lot of things, and this recording is going to be available to the IABL members as well as our members on the group, right? So from different perspectives in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Senegal, in South Africa, I think we've learned a lot. We've listened to you, and we gave you a space to tell us your opinions. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. And I would like to invite you to most likely join our other panels from different parts of the world, so you know how they coped with their issues. Thanks again, and see you soon. Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.